Day. Good morning and welcome, Maupe Yusuf.
I'm not even going to say anything about this morning, Maupe, about that one. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde. All right, where we're taking you this morning is a little different from where we've ever taken you. It's a monument in the country that's lasted since 1934, according to available information. And that is it right there, the Abeokuta Golf Course. And would you even believe that we have a golf course in Abeokuta? Well, yes, we do. And that is what you have right there on your screen. It's a beautiful, beautiful facility right there, you know, on your screen. And look at the lush green, a place that you just want to, sometimes you just want to walk in the woods, right? And that's for some who like to do that. 1994, 9-hole golf course, and has since been renovated and expanded to an 18-hole golf course. As you can see, it's a lot of vegetation and scenic views. I mean, don't you just want to follow this, you know, every morning? You just wake up to it. And as you would expect, it's hosted several international events. And guess what? It's also a driving range. For those of you who know what that is, and those of you who just want to break the rules, this is the right place to do it on the roads. Is this something you're looking forward to, Maupe?
Did you just say break the rules? What kind of rules are you looking to break here?
I'm talking about those who just can't keep it focused.
You're playing against yourself. Well, okay, well, it looks really... I mean, to be very honest, it does feel like somewhere you can take a deep breath. You know, where you really want to suck in oxygen, because you can see the plants there giving off enough for you to take in and breathe out your carbon dioxide. Well, this is what we have for you this morning. We hope that the size of it is already setting the mood for your Friday, especially for golf enthusiasts who did not know that there is a golf course in Ogun State. So when next you visit, that might be a place for you to actually check out. not just Akwa Ibom, you know. Are they giving Akwa Ibom a run for their money?
Well, be sure you'll be allowed to enter here, though, because it's definitely not for everybody.
How do you know that?
It's a golf club. See, sometimes I have to be a member of, you know, to get into some of these clubs or courses. So it's not just walking. But the moral, the message here is that, look, whatever you do, try and take a step back. Get some sort of, if we can call it work-life balance, fine. You know, could help your mental health. I know that most times we're usually on the go, almost all the time, always in a hurry. But sometimes, most times, never get there because it's a continuing cycle. But when you can, just take a step back, because look, what is life anyway? No matter what you have, be thankful, be grateful, because it could help you. Because if you get yourself sucked in that cycle, or that bubble of what? Depression, desperation, it could lead to death.
Indeed, untimely death. And no one wants that. Oh, well, so quite a lot to take in this morning, Chamberlain.
Try it out. It won't be bad for you. Go break the rules, just. What rules do you say?
I don't know what rules. Please, whatever you do, drive safely, Ayo. They have a driving range. It's not that you should go and break your neck there. Please, take notes.
Okay, well, just by way of information, one of the things that we'll be having today is Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. And there's going to be an inflation outlook on minimum wage consensus. That's part of what we'll be looking at this morning. But, you know, Chamberlain, you were talking about something happening in Edo State, right?
Yes, Chamberlain, you're the one talking about it, weren't you?
No, I mean, it's something that really should concern everyone. It's a narrative. I don't know which election cycle that we've had in this country that you could, you know, be confident that we haven't had this sort of incident. Unfortunately, a policeman has been killed in Edo State because one of the policemen attached to the APC governorship candidate himself, we understand himself, and the deputy governor, who the court has ruled in his favor, even though the state House of Assembly has appealed that judgment. Well, on their way back to the States, and they say upon arrival, certain person started shooting. And so, yes, we've seen comments from the police confirming the death, unfortunately, of the police officer. And so, and that some of them who came through, they came in a Sienna bus. So, but the thing about all of this is people who did this to the police officer, it's up to the police now to ensure that, because chances are that they might not have been acting on their own. They might have been sent from a particular group or team. Who are those people? Will the police get those people? Will they be made to face the music? Or will it be one of those stories? The point of the story is, look, we can't allow this kind of things. But why do people usually lend themselves to do
violence?
This, though? What, they pay them, whatever you can get, just go take lives? It's a sad one, which everyone who's anyone should not accept by any means.
Yeah, and it's something that we all should repudiate in our politics. I mean, violence should have no place whatsoever in our politics. I mean, I was watching yesterday the visuals, and I really did feel very sad. I felt very sad because here this policeman was, 1 minute he was alive, performing his functions, attached to a governorship candidate, and next minute he was dead. You know, with no inkling of how that was going to happen. His family, you know, thinking that their breadwinner is safe, is okay, you know, he's just a trip to Edo State, and next minute he's dead. Even for the people who were around, I'm sure they were in a bit of shock that this man was just right beside us here, and now a stray bullet, and that's it. You know, so I think that in every way, all of the stakeholders in Edo politics need to keep this elections clean. They need to keep it free of violence. They need to, you know, really, really speak and condemn in very strong words what has happened, and not just condemn it with words, but to also lead it by action and tell their supporters that, look, we do not want any guns, no violence allowed in these elections. The idea is for people to be able to vote their choice. You'll be there maximum 8 years, according to our constitution, and the people will judge you whether you've done well or you haven't done well, and after that, they move on to the next. So what exactly is this violence about? Why should any human being have to lose their lives because people are trying to be governor of a particular state? That really is really very worrisome, Chamberlain.
But there are more questions, because, I mean, one wonders, does this then mean that the Edo State Police Command never had any inkling or intelligence whatsoever that this kind of thing was going to happen?
Exactly, or that there were people who were outside of the airport who were armed. Is that the situation? Is it that they did not, you know, put into consideration? Because if they did not, look, it is one of their own who has taken the fall for this. Yeah. It's one of their own who has fallen as a result of what has happened, whatever information they had and refused to act on. So I'm hoping that not only will they find the people that have done this and bring them to book, I'm also hoping that in the future they would, you know, make it very clear to the actors that there will be no guns allowed anywhere near, no knives, no axes, nothing allowed, nothing that, you know, spells violence around areas of elections, because you never can tell. Today it is a policeman. Who knows who's next tomorrow?
But, you know, the implication of this, too, could be reprisals.
Exactly. And we heard one of the actors, you know, in the reports that we did yesterday, one of the actors saying, look, we don't intend to retaliate, but look, let's just let the other party know that the stakes are high now. What does that mean? Which, you know, clearly means that they will be seeking revenge. It means you cannot attack us and we will not attack, but whoever it is their perceived enemies are. So I think that there needs to be a de-escalation of whatever is brewing in Edo State. Before now, the Oba of Benin had to weigh in to tell the political actors. Perhaps it is time that he also weighs in, you know, with his fatherly presence. And let the political actors, this will not be tolerated in any way.
But, you know, not to burst anyone's bubble or to, because the thing is, if you check over time, political thugs have never faced the music.
Oh, they haven't?
Largely. Because if the police knew or didn't know, because, I mean, can we actually accept that they didn't have intelligence, or were the sponsors too high a stake for them to even do anything about the police? How did the so-called boss, if they came in a Sienna bus, get away? who own those buses? What is the level of investigation? What are they doing at the moment? So several questions about all of this. It means, does it then suggest all the other candidates now, you have to be cautious when you're going for your campaigns? What about the supporters? You put them indirectly in harm's way. So there's several dimensions to this which these chaps probably don't care. But you should. You should out there.
Well, you know, one of the things that comes to my mind straight off is what you were just going to, you just mentioned. There have been no consequences, at least no significant consequence strong enough to deter anyone from these kind of things. I mean, even before now, I mean, over the years in this current republic that we're in now, remember that conversation, Chamberlain and Malco, that we had with the former, well, now late governor of Ondo State, Abeokuta, who said, look, there are such things as political gunshots. In other words, things you just say that don't really expectedly shouldn't have any impact on people's lives. Well, sometimes those rhetorics actually are converted into the kind of situation that we're talking about in Edo State now, and who knows where else, and God forbid this would happen anywhere else. Now, this is what we have now, and a policeman has died, and please, for the life of me, these people went to work. I mean, their families were expecting that they would come back, went to work defending a principle, and that's probably, over the years, that's the last we've heard of it. Nothing else happens. Nothing else happens. The person has died, and that person has died, and that's it. Is this going to be the same? We don't even have a name to the policeman that has been killed, at least as at this moment. Should there be a name to the person, then we at least we begin to give some credence to the individual that is involved. We don't have a name to him. It's just a statistic as far as some people are concerned. Why must this happen at all? This shouldn't ever happen. But here we are again. Is this going to be the last, dear Nigerian police force? These are the issues that people are concerned about. And while we are talking about the political class and the security agencies, how about the people of Edo State? What are we telling them? I thought they said that politics shouldn't be a do-or-die affair. Isn't it looking that way now? Anyway, maybe we'll have more of this on the front pages of the papers this morning. Chamberlain, please take us through it.
Go ahead and take you through some of the dailies we've got for you this morning. The Daily Times, Labour accepts FG offer of 70,000 naira as new minimum wage. Says promise of a 3-year wage review by FG particularly appealed to workers. Why I had to intervene in the negotiations, Tinubu. Next to the Nigerian News Direct, also on the minimum wage, Labour, FG agree on 70,000 naira as Tinubu pledges 3-year review to support Labour with 36 CNG buses to ease workers' cost of living. We can't pay 70,000 naira without government support, private sector. Mixed reactions trail FG Labour's 70,000 naira minimum wage. Workers say they can't survive on 70,000 naira as minimum wage, accuse Labour leaders of compromise, say this is a sellout. Analysts say increasing salary will provoke other market forces. Ask FG to consider development of public infrastructure. Others. Tinubu pledges reviewing minimum wage every 3 years. Assures protesting SANU, NASU of payment of withheld salaries. So that's a big lead on the front page here with all the riders. But look at this beneath that lead story. We know promoters of planned nationwide protest, says FG. And then Nigerian Tribune, also on the minimum wage. OPS cautions as FG, Labour agree on 70,000 naira. Minimum wage to be reviewed every 3 years. Why I intervened in negotiations, ascribed to the president. We accepted new amounts with mixed feelings. Ajero, president orders payment of withheld SANU, NASU members' salary. And then look at this at the bottom strip, guys. Bill for Local Government Independent Electoral Commission lands in Senate. This will interest a lot of people. What the new bill says, and then Northern Senators shoot down South-South Development Commission bill. So that you also see right there. The Guardian, minimum wage, Labour agrees to 70,000 naira. as lawmakers slash pay for 6 months. That's how the Guardian reports here today. Vanguard equally focuses on the minimum wage. FG Labour settles for 70,000 naira. OPS lists conditions. We're accepting it with mixed feelings because of economy. Ajero, minimum wage law to be reviewed every 3 years. Tinubu to submit executive bill to NAS next week. We can't pay without FG's support. OPS. NLC holds NEC meeting today. Reps to expedite action on bill. Speaker Abbas. All there for you on the front page. Daily Trust. Why we accepted 70,000 naira minimum wage ascribed to labor. Government must cut taxes for us to pay. Private sector. Reps surrender 50% salary over hardship. Cut your allowances. Articles. Citizens tell lawmakers. Well, Business Day focuses on business. Petrol landing cost at 1,117 naira. Pressures NNPC's, quote, secret subsidy. That's how Business Day reports that this morning. So there are some of the dailies we've got for you here today, guys.
Let me call attention to something on the front page of the Daily Independent, which I hope does not lead to some of the collapsed building circumstances that we've had in different parts of the country over time. On the front page of the Daily Independent newspaper is that news at the top left corner of the paper, front page of it. 31 million housing units in Nigeria, substandard. That's according to the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, architect Ahmed Dangiwa, who said actually 31.6 million housing units in Nigeria are substandard. The question is, what do we do about this? On our sister program, The Morning Brief, in the course of the week, we had a conversation with someone, the people in the Building Guild, and all they want to do is to look at the issues that are responsible for collapsed buildings. It's not as bad as the collapsed building situation is. The next question you want to ask is, who is monitoring? I expect, maybe we should expect the federal and state governments to come out and tell us what's the process that goes on into building. There are local governments, houses are in local governments in states. So is there a mechanism to ensure that buildings are built according to expected prescription, recommended prescription by the orders of the state or by the parameters of state, and all of those things. So 31 million housing units in Nigeria, 31.6 million houses actually in Nigeria, substandard is very concerning. Are they marked accordingly? People are looking for houses. Will they get into these places? And I don't know, but that's just my take this morning, guys.
Well, I'm roommate.
Leadership of organized labor unions arrived at State House for the second round of meetings with President Bola Tinubu on the new national minimum wage. Last week, the meeting ended inconclusively. The president arrives with his team, including the secretary to the government of the Federation, chief of staff to the president, some ministers, heads of agencies and aides to the president in attendance. 1.5 hours later, the meeting comes to an end. Cabinet ministers outlined key outcomes of the meeting.
The new national minimum wage that we expect Mr. President to submit to the National Assembly for legislation is 70,000 naira. But that is not all. There is also a boost, like Mr. President has assured, and ensuring that massive investment is going to be made in the area of infrastructure. There is also a deepening of the investment of the federal government in renewable energy. More money is going to go into the acquisition of more buses, the CNG buses.
The review of this minimum wage policy has to be reduced to 3 years. That is, 5 years is too long a time to get any minimum wage review that is not very wealthy.
The labor leaders are more restrained.
We are taking this with mixed feeling because of the situation of the economy, but we have to move ahead. Despite the situation, and the negotiation can linger, coming from 62 to 70, and then with the promise that we'll come back soon to negotiate it. We are taking it back to our constituency.
The next review will be 3 years, and after that pronouncement, we from Labour, just has been said that, well, we have received what the president has promised.
While commending the president on the commencement of the student loan fund, they insist on strict compliance.
Not a situation where the children of the rich are the one who are also able to access the student loans. The parameters must be put in place so that the children of the poor, those that cannot actually afford school fees, should be the target. And they also said they will look at that as well.
We understand that the president has directed that the bill on the new minimum wage be prepared and sent to the National Assembly for passage by next week. From the presidential villa, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
Okay, yes, indeed. We're joined now by Mr. Wallace Matoyering, the DG of NECA. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, and thank you for having us again.
Well, here we are. We know that private sector had offered different fees, 48, 52, 57, 60, 62, but here we are now. So I know you put up a statement as well, but, and people have looked at that statement wondering, okay, what next now for the OPS?
Well, thank you once again for having us. I think the first thing is to commend the president, at least bringing the closure, a seeming closure, because it's not closed as it is. A seeming closure to this is part one of the whole conversation.
But there will be a part two.
Yeah, there will be a part two, and part of the part two is part of the things we share now. Putting a closure to it and coming to terms, or Labour coming to terms with the reality of the 70,000, which to us is good enough. Good enough because when you earn wages, for the private sector, when you earn wages, you don't eat the cash. You plow back the cash in purchasing goods and services, and it feeds back into the production process. So it also aids the development of the private sector. So once you keep the flow going, then the capacity of private sector increases. Now, the key fundamental issue that we also noted from the president's comment yesterday was is appreciating the fact that there's need for support for organized businesses to be able to pay this, and support for the subnationals to be able to pay this. I think to us that is quite fundamental. And during the conversation at the National Minimum Wage Committee level, in fact, one of the premises for our agreeing to 62 was that government must support with A, B, C, D, E, F. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, I don't want to call it an agreement, but there was a deep understanding between the government representatives and the organized private sector representatives that these supports, they are very necessary, they are very important for us to move ahead with the 62,000. Now that it's now 70,000, I think the government needs to expeditiously come to terms and agree on those support for organized businesses so that we all will move forward.
Let's have a look at some of those demands. Do we call it requests or suggestions, which you also listed in your statement, which you now shed a little more light on that. So all of this that you listed there now, which you are requesting, I hope you can see this, but so is this, what was this came from, you say the president said there's need for support.
Yeah.
And so when you listed all of this, you expect that the government will make commitments and uphold all of this if the organized private sector is to pay this minimum wage. Is that your point?
Well, our point remains, we want to trust the president that its support, its context of support, its content and context of support aligns with the conversation that we had with the representatives of the government during the national minimum wage conversation. So we don't want to preempt or be unnecessarily agitated because of those issues. But we believe strongly that this request, they are germane to the survival of the organized private sector. And even if we agree on a figure, even if a figure is announced, the fundamental part of it is the capacity to pay. And I think we're all in agreement. We're all in agreement with labor that there is very, very important need for the capacity of the private sector to be enhanced to pay.
I don't know how the OPS came up with this, because that very first one, reversal of increase in electricity tariff, I think that was part of what Labour too were asking. Yeah. But clearly, it doesn't appear feasible.
Nothing is invisible. Nothing is impossible. You know, if you want growth, if you want development, then you make concessions. If I can't meet up my production and production capacity, if a factor is strangling me from progressing, is strangling my capacity to create jobs, is strangling my capacity to maintain jobs, is strangling my capacity to expand, then you have to look at those factors.
So wait, as things stand now, pardon me, can the OPS pay this minimum wage now?
As at this morning, it will be difficult for the OPS to pay. It wasn't a joke. I think very important to say this. It wasn't a joke. The whole conversation at the committee level, it wasn't a joke. It was very intense conversation. It was very emotionally draining conversation we had. And for the whole OPS to come up with this list, we were not cherry picking lists. It was a list that was looked at dispassionately by the whole stratum of the OPS, that this is what we need for us to remain sustainable. We're not talking of competitiveness now. So you have to be sustainable first before you move into the realm of competitiveness. And now that the president has mentioned the issue of support, we believe strongly that it's referring to this context that were presented to government.
All the factors of labor, I've just taken a look at, the land, water, every other thing that goes into making an industry, production, and labor, that's human resources, is sometimes the one that suffers the most. It's sometimes the one that is least considered. I'm taking a look at what it is that organized private sector, what you say organized private sector cannot pay. That 70,000 naira, which amounts to 3,181 naira per day, if you were to look at it. Are you really saying that organized private sector cannot pay that?
Now, the context, if you bring in this context, then we will have fallen into the whole. I don't want to call it error of the narration. What we are talking about we are not talking about salary. We are talking of the minimum, the lowest.
That's what we're saying.
Which nobody should pay.
Exactly. Yeah. The minimum, which perhaps nobody should be, and I know that certainly would affect radiation. There will be consequential adjustments as a result of this. I'm not going to imagine that perhaps as a result of this jump from 30,000 naira now to 70,000 naira, which is well over 100%, that the person at the top is going to be asking for 100% increase. Is that the fear of the organized private sector?
It's not, the real context of the minimum wage, it doesn't affect, there are some levels, it's for the most vulnerable workers.
Indeed. So if we all agree that it is for the most vulnerable person, is the organized private sector maintaining that they cannot pay the most vulnerable person 3,181 naira if you were to say that we have 22 working days in a month?
Okay, let me expand the context for more clarity. Now, in the private sector, you have different strata of organizations. You have the big ones, you have the MSMEs, you have the highest paying organizations, the multinationals. Now, the wage in the private sector, across sectors, we have over 40 sectors, from food and beverages to oil and gas. Like the oil and gas in the private sector, the minimum wage in oil and gas is over 300,000. Now you have some other sectors that are paying They are paying over 100,000 in the context of the kind of structure they run.
Yes.
Now you have some other sectors in the private sector that are paying 50,000, that are paying 60,000, that are paying 40,000, even when it was 30,000. Now, what we are talking about is a national minimum wage. That when it is passed, it binds everybody. Now, if you take the minimum wage too high, now you will have compromised those in the private sector that are struggling to be competitive. As I mentioned, and the basis of our argument at the committee level, when we came up with the 52,000, the first offer we did, was to look at the whole strata of the organized private sector. Some are paying some are the highest payers. You have some are the lower payers. Then look at what's quantum, or what there's something they call in statistics, the quartile. What is the best quartile that we capture the least of those, the most struggling of those businesses? That if you put this figure in this range, yes, the most struggling of businesses in the organized private sector will be able to pay. The percentile, you can't pick the highest percentile because you will have compromised every other person down. You can't pick the medium percentile because you will have compromised those down. So you look for the modal percentile. That look, everybody in the private sector should be able to pay this. That was the premise for us to arrive at our first offer. In the course of negotiation, we went back to our members and said, okay, we can still consider this. So it was statistically, it was 52. Then when Labour came up and said, look, they cannot accept this figure, a lot of concessions were being traded. And that was why this conversation we had about the support we needed to aid those businesses that are not able to pay. There was a big concession they were making. So it's not a fact that some businesses cannot pay 70,000. There are people in the private sector currently that are paying over 70,000.
Certainly.
But we must protect those that are not able to pay, because once we pass the law, then it captures.
Shouldn't there be a more critical look at those businesses that say that they cannot pay? Because for every other thing that has gone up, electricity, I mean, part of your demands right now, I'm saying I'm trying to look for the reversal of increase in electricity tariffs. I was going to say the organized private sector, which you're talking about, the electricity people are now a part of it, because we understand that, many parts of it have now been privatized. So I imagine that these people too are a part of it. Are you saying that they should shut down their business? So
NERC should play its role. There are regulations. If there are going to be increases, there is a regulation on how to go about those increases. So the best we are asking for is this: if there are regulations, let us respect that regulation. If there's a process for increments, then let us respect that process for increments.
So I imagine that because the NERC and the DISCOs and all of them will argue that they have only increased tariff for those who are on a certain band. So it will mean that the people whom you are, asking for a reversal for must be on that band to be able to enjoy the reversal.
Absolutely. Most businesses are
on band A.
Most businesses are in the higher band areas, basically. So most 98% of businesses are operating in the urban area, which is captured in the in band A. Most industrial hubs, they are in the band A area. Most big businesses, they operate within the context of the city.
I have to admit, I mean, everyone knows that electricity tariff has jumped 330%. It's really amazing when you put it down. That does not include the cost of food, does not include the cost of transport, and transport is another area.
Does it include the taxes that we are currently struggling with?
Yeah, you are talking about taxes, but what I'm trying to say is that the people whom the private sector are going to be employing, they are also going to be facing this increment in electricity, they are facing the increments in transport, they are facing the increments. Many landlords have increased their rent as a result of this particular development. Food, we hear inflation is going up every day.
Absolutely.
So, is it really, when you talk about it, would you really say that the people who actually make up, the entrepreneurs, yes, one has to give it to them that they have the courage to set up these businesses. But would you say that they are really also willing to shake a bit, make some sacrifices so that the people at the very bottom can actually get something? Get something fair to go home with.
You there's an adage, that I used to, a context, that I used to explain this. I said, for the bird to perch safely on the tree, the tree must be in a good place, must be stable to a large extent. Or if not, then the bird will perch on a tree that is wobbling, then his own stability also becomes suspect. So for us, is why the businesses have made sacrifice. And I must confess to you that a lot of sacrifice, a lot of give and take has been made. If you remember, when fuel subsidy was removed, it was the private sector that responded first. We come up with new model of work, the hybrid work, and people work 2 days from home, work 3 days from home. It was to mitigate the challenges. The private sector came up first with salary, with allowances, different kind of allowances to mitigate the challenges that employees are facing. The private sector led that. Businesses that could give lunch during work time, they provided that. Those that could share products, they share products for their staff so that they can mitigate those things. Those that could provide buses, this the quasi Uber buses, to pick staffs from different locations to the office. The private sector did that. Those are concessions. And there's so much you can do when your back is basically on the wall. So the private sector have remained committed to our employees. We are not slave drivers, as some have said we are, but there is so much that you can do when your back is basically on the wall.
Could you help us understand, because all of this demand, you said it was supposed to be for what, 2-3 years a period? Is that what you're saying?
The economy improves. The foundation of this conversation.
That's indefinite.
The foundation of this conversation, this conversation on minimum wage, conversation on request, they are all standing on the good economy. Even if we agree 70,000, even if tomorrow the minimum wages we all agree 100,000 or 200,000, or we agree the 615,000 that Labour put forward in the first place. If the inflation rate is still going up, if the cost of forex is still going up, if the business environment is still inhospitable, then the value of that 615 will still be nothing, because it will be able to purchase much. So it goes back to the economy. Absolutely.
It does indeed. And I'm just, can you help us understand? Because I'm still trying to understand which cadre of workers would you say are the most vulnerable within the organized private sector, who, they fear the organized private sector might not be able to afford to pay this amount?
The 70,000 as announced. If you look at the MSMEs, let me pick the SMEs first. An SME from the context of the national definition of SMEs, and businesses that are employees between 1 and about 50, and then 1 about 200. And you look at those, the security guards, according to the ILO context, employees that are defenseless. Not even those that are technically in the union. Those that are basically defenseless. We talk about the contract workers. We talk about the guards. We talk about the drivers. We talk about those in contract employment, that their capacity to protect themselves is almost tending to zero. So the minimum wage law comes to make sure that, look, everybody in that cadre, they are protected, that you cannot pay below. It's not the figure itself. I think we should get this context. It's not the figure. It's the figure below which nobody should pay. It is not that because the minimum wage says 70,000, then everybody will latch on is 70,000. No, it is a figure, the threshold below which you cannot pay. That is to protect those employees, those workers that cannot protect themselves. Now, in our context, we have changed the narration, and we've mixed the whole context of salary with wages. Yeah. We've mixed everything up, so it's now sounding the same thing for all of us, which is not. So for us, it is to protect the most vulnerable workers, those that I've mentioned, those whose capacity to protect themselves is tending to zero.
Do you think that NECA could actually begin to make the case? Because we have seen this argument, even as it proceeds, that perhaps those kinds of, those levels of workers the hours that they work, for instance, should be deregulated. We've seen even the workers themselves make sacrifices for their own employers because they understand what the situation of things are. I mean, people are sleeping in the office because the cost of transportation is really exorbitant. Absolutely. People are working lengthier hours as a result of what is happening. So if that is truly the situation, is it possible that NECA can begin to make the case that perhaps what we can do is also deregulate, break down the number of hours that we need, and then, you know, see how we can take employees for those hours and then let them go and find employment elsewhere. And it's possible that they might find, you know, rather than holding them down and saying at the end of the month, we still cannot pay you 70,000 naira.
You know, it's part of the conversation we're championing now, and championing it beyond the issue of these employees. You know, there's a new context now of the care workers. You know, there's new context of those
cleaners,
of the domestic workers, and we've taken those contexts to the ILO now. In fact, the ILO is working on frameworks to actually protect, to also make sure that domestic workers are also unionized, to also make sure that care workers are also unionized, to also make sure that those sectors, those employees that ordinarily they don't have voices, that they are also unionized. And the framework, the conversation about that is currently ongoing in the ILO, either to come up with a recommendation or come up with a convention to protect this sort of workers. So those are the things that we are championing at the local level and also at the international level.
You're championing it for the employers?
For the employees.
Or the employees.
It will surprise you.
Because you're the DG of the Employers Consultative Association, not the employees.
This is the truth of it. You know, sometimes people have this context, this perception that employers are Shylocks. You know, the reality of it, and our colleagues in NLCTUC, we all accept this fact, that for labor and for employers, it is either a mutually assured success or mutually assured destruction. The business cannot survive without the workers. The workers cannot survive without the employees, without the employers. And we have crossed that realm of this mutual suspicion. So it is in the best interest of the employers to make sure that the workers are well paid, to make sure that the workers the environment in which they work is safe, is in the best interest of the employer, because whatever wage, you know, my initial comment, whatever wage you pay a worker is not going to eat the cash. The quantum of the cash is flowing back to the business. So it's a mutual agreement. And Comrade Dajiru, you know, with due respect to him, he alluded to it during our 67th AGM. And look, we need to cross this part of mutual suspicion, because if the business is not surviving, labor will not survive. And if labor did not survive, then the business will not survive. So we've crossed that part of mutual suspicion and looking at what is for us in the best interest of the workers, because if the workers are correct, then there's a high potential or possibility that the business will also be correct.
Well, part of the concern here too is that this, no matter what's agreed now, because even before this was agreed, when it was 30,000, some states were not able to pay.
Those are the issues that the government will have to deal with.
And then enforceability of this is also a big challenge, because I mean, it was yesterday I learned, someone was telling me that they actually, primary and secondary schools, that their teachers are paid 35,000 naira till date, and they cannot go above that, no matter what you do. So are they going to shut them down or what? So
you know, if you permit me, the reality of it is this, and it's very important for us to also get this at the back of our mind. The president addressed two issues. In the whole law, the National Minimum Wage Act, there are about 5 issues there. The one is the figure that the president have dealt with, the 70,000. The second one is the duration. It used to be 5 years. We supported a reduction to 4 years, but the president has approved 3 years. Our concern was because there is negotiation in some sectors. Negotiation goes on some sectors every year, in some sectors 2 years, in some sectors 3 years. Now, if we bring this down to 3 years, I mean, some sectors, they'll be going through the rigors of negotiation. The national minimum wage first at the higher level, and then the sectoral negotiation at the sector level. But 3 years we accepted. But there are 3 other contentious issues that we have to deal with. The issue of violation and enforcement, which is going to be a big issue. Because you mentioned the issue of some state governors that are not paying. So how do we address the issue of violation and enforcement? How do we address the issue of penalties of those that have violated, and then of critical importance towards also how do we address the issue of exceptions, because the last law in 2019 create exceptions for some businesses. So those three issues are not being addressed, and we believe strongly that when we get to the National Assembly during the public hearing, those issues...
Is that the part 2 you were talking about?
That is the part 2 I'm talking about.
Ayo.
One of the issues that comes to me straight up, Mr. Smarto Unide, is, first of all, I'll ask you, how much are we at risk of people losing their jobs as a result of this announcement, which is yet to become a law?
You know, in 2019, during the height of COVID-19, where businesses were not even working at all, where the environment was critical, employers signed an MOU with organized labor that would do everything within the context of our capacity, that no worker will be retrenched. And we kept faith with that MOU. And we believe strongly, even within the context of this new national minimum wage, we'll do all our best, all that is necessary, trusting that the government will also do all that is necessary within the context of its limitation to support organized private sector, that no employee, as much as possible, is laid off because of this new reality.
Well, the reality of business is also not lost on us. I mean, the business, as you said earlier, the business has to survive for the employees to survive. It is only natural to expect that every businessman or every organization will protect the survival of that business and possibly even shed some weight in the interest of, you know, in the larger interest, as we say. So, again, I ask you that question. And I'm asking it so that those who are also having conversations with you in part 2 will also know that the risks are there. So, if you would, you know, what are the risks? What are the likely? Because now a lot more will be expected by employers from the employees, because when you pay more, you expect people to do more. So how much are we at risk? What are the things that have to change from the perspective of the employee if the employer is expected to keep faith?
First on the table would be the context and content of productivity. And we need really to redefine what productivity is now, you know, with the context of this new direction we are going. We all have to agree on the need for improved productivity. We all have to agree to continuously innovate. You know, innovation will play a lot of role within the context of what we're doing. We all have to agree that there is need for reskilling. For employees, there's need for reskilling. There's need for individuals to take more responsibility for their growth, even as the business continues to support. And for government also, there's need to live up to its commitments to continuously support organized private sector. There's need for government to live up to its commitments to continuously make the business environment more hospitable for businesses to operate, because that is basically the fulcrum of all these issues. So those contexts must change, and those definitions of what exactly is productivity must also consensusly be agreed.
Is there any conversation between Labour and the OPS about productivity? We've asked this question over time, because every time we're talking about increased pay, hardly does anyone really talk about productivity. So is that kind of conversation also happening between the OPS and Labour and the employees for productivity, so that the pay can increase even with or without a minimum wage announced?
You know, at the private sector level, because government is an employer, at the private sector level, there's always what we call key performance indicators at the beginning of the year, where targets are set, where targets are reviewed on the go, probably quarterly or by annually. And then at the end of the year, you do what we call the performance appraisal to actually assess if an employee has fulfilled the terms within the context of the KPIs. And those that didn't fulfill it, you come up with personal development plans for them to also help them to meet up those performance. So for the private sector, there has been, we might just need to rejig it now so that it becomes more definitive for all of us, because the realities are changing, and we cannot continue. We can't use you can't sustain your health with the drugs that you took last year. So those conversations will commence again. We've reached out to organized labor, and I can assure you, conversation is also going on behind the scene between us and organized labor, so that we can be on the same page moving forward. Not only on the issue of productivity, but on all issues that affect employers and also have consequences for employees.
Well, we know that there are some states that were unable to pay the 30,000 naira minimum wage. Now, in the event that any organization in the OPS is unable to pay, and those who are, you said, are already paying 70K are unable to sustain it, what happens?
When we get to that bridge, we'll definitely we'll cross it. But I can assure you, the OPS is committed, the OPS is willing, the OPS is a veritable partner, not only to government, but also to labor, to ensure that we cross this bridge and move forward from this conversation of national minimum wage. I think it has dragged significantly since 30th of January, when the committee was set up. We are committed. We are available to continuously collaborate with government and collaborate with organized labor to address these issues as they arise.
So, as it stands now, they're going to go back to the governors. Labor will go back to their constituencies. I think we're just going to rubber stamp some of these things, but it's still going to be a huge challenge because all of those concerns. But do you have any indication whatsoever that government will go on with at least some part of the support that you're seeking?
You know, we are convinced from the body language of the representatives of the federal government and the state government during the conversation at national minimum wage. We had very deep conversations. We're convinced about the conversation. We are convinced about their credibility, that they will take those concerns and these requests to the federal government. And when the government, the president mentioned support yesterday, we also believed, because we also had meetings yesterday, the private sector representatives, we believe the president was alluding to the conversation that was held by the private sector, between the private sector and its representatives, alluding to those requests that we made during that conversation. So there's no reason to doubt the government or the credibility of those that represented the government at that committee. And we are hoping that they will look at this, not only look at this, but expeditiously put life or give life to this request. And probably call the representative of the private sector to also shed more light into this, as the president has called organized labor to this. Hopefully, we'll also be able to give the president and the government our own triggers as labor did.
Well, at the end of the day, even if you give them all those boosters, well, there are some huge challenges that we'll have to grapple with in the oil sector, security, in transportation. So all of these things are government functions that if and when they perform all of those things, it will have a great impact on what they say ease of doing businesses. So those are huge concerns, but how they go ahead with this is going to be a lot.
You know, you can't do everything. The reality of it is, and we all know this, the multifaceted challenges or multidimensional challenges that this government inherited, we all have a very good idea of it. You can't solve them with a magic wand. You know, and what we have advised is, look, just pick the priorities. What are the priority areas that we need to deal with? And you cannot
for government, in terms of policies.
Yes, policies. You cannot pick those priority areas alone. You know, selecting those priorities areas must be inclusive, so that you don't shave my head behind my back.
Was anybody able to raise the concern that, look, many of these challenges actually stem from our politicians? Because if, for instance, they look at, because when they talk about, oh no, federal character, equity, some of these things are inimical to economic development.
Absolutely, policies. I totally agree with you. Absolutely. In the private sector it's less of federal character. It's less of regionalism. It's less of Abeokuta in the private sector. It's strictly driven by merit, by capacity, by competence in the private sector. So it's a different context in the private sector. I would just hope progressively the private sector will also wake up to this responsibility of definitively and strategically influencing what is happening in the public sector. We're already doing that, but I think that there's more to be done.
Do you have any concerns with this? I'm looking at the headline of Business Day now. Petrol landing costed 1,117 naira. Precious NNPC's secret subsidy. You know, the government has not come out to say that there is actually, that subsidy has returned. They have kept mum on that particular statement of fact that everyone knows. So the question now is, do you, as organized private sector, because even yesterday, Mr. Joe Ajero, while he was fielding questions, was saying that the president gave them an option. He said that he increases the price of fuel. You can have your 250,000 naira, but I'll increase the price of fuel, or I keep it at that, and then, you know, that's the closest they've come to an admission that, look, they're actually trying to hold things steady. That came out. So do you have any concerns
we are very concerned.
Looking at what is currently happening secretly with subsidy?
We are very concerned, massively concerned about two things.
Excuse me.
Not only concerning this, concerning many contradictions. Because, you know, if you don't deal with those contradictions, then we'll continue to go rigmarole. You know, the more you look, the less you see. You know, when we had no refinery, we had fuel, we had crude oil. There was no issue about non-availability of crude oil. Now we have the Dangote refinery, Port Harcourt refinery is to come on board in the next few weeks, and then suddenly there's no more crude oil. So those are the concerns that we have. Because the idea of it is, look, if we refine, look at it. Dangote have said he has the capacity to refine for local consumption and also export. We believe the Port Harcourt refinery can also, in his own limitations, refine for local consumption. So, in the real sense, you know, the big question is, why are we still importing?
Those are opportunities that we have to address some of these concerns. We have to let merit those who can, not because they are political cronies, to get into places and keep us in a bind, because you have to satisfy those who did one or two things for you and political favor. So, anyway, we have to thank you for coming on this morning. While it's Matt,
thank you for having us once again.
All right, well, back in just a moment with business. Don't go away.
We are thrilled to have you on board as we chart the course for our next chapter. We're inviting you to take up your rights in full for 19 naira 75 kobo per share. From the 8th of July to 14th of August, take advantage of the chance to acquire one more ordinary share for every 2 shares in your portfolio. Visit www.theaccesscorporation.com to subscribe. Access Holdings, where financial solutions connect the world.
Some say learning is fun, but as a mom, I see how demanding it can be for my child. That's why I ensure he starts every day with a cup of Bonvita. Give your child Bonvita. It contains essential vitamins and minerals that support mental and physical vitality. Bonvita. Prepare them to win every day.
The Duchess International Hospital caters to every aspect of the family's health needs. A one-stop shop for maternity and child health services, emergency medicine and critical care, medical and surgical subspecialties, dental and eye care, and a range of other subspecialties and services, all available at a single location right here in the heart of Ikeja. And it really doesn't matter if you're paying out of pocket using your HMO or private insurance. We focus completely on providing that world-class affordable healthcare for all the family at all times.
Belongs to the dreamers, to the doers, to those who are not afraid of the side hustle. It's for those who are ready to turn their passion into something big. And to help keep you revitalized and inspired, Top Tea is with you every step of the way. You are made for more. Find your inspiration. Top tea, big round bags of flavor.
At Access Holdings, we are heading into the next phase of our evolution. And with our rights issue, you get an increased stake in it. From the 8th of July to the 14th of August, you can get your share of over 17 billion shares at 19.75 kobo per share. That's one new ordinary share to every 2 shares held. Visit theaccesscorporation.com to subscribe. Access Holdings, where financial solutions connect the world.
Welcome to the start of the trading day. That's the TGIF trade right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Let's get to the top stories that set your agenda now. Starting with oil prices. We see oil prices are down today, 0.6%. That's what we have for Brent, $84.50 a barrel. And we have that WTI crude, $82. We see mixed signals weighed on investor sentiment. That's boosted the dollar at this time. And we know that relationship, when you have a strong dollar, we see dollar-denominated commodities actually fall on that. So we see the DXY, that's dollar index, actually rallying at this time. Let's get a check on the FX market. Now we see the Naira reacted to the sale of foreign exchange by the CBN to eligible BDC operators at 1,450 Naira to a dollar, and immediately we see a reaction, 0.94%. That's the gain for the close yesterday, 1,566 Naira, again from the 1,581 Naira close from the previous day. At NAFEX window, just a 1 Naira difference there, 1,565 Naira close from 1,583, but a bigger move up, 1.14%. So definitely Friday, Thursday looking good. Let's see if that plays into the Friday trading session and hopefully into next week. Well, other matters now. KPMG Nigeria, leading global tax and advisory service firm, has expressed strong reservations about the federal government's recent imposition of a 50% windfall tax on banks' foreign exchange revaluation gains for 2023. The firm warns that this move could spark a legal dispute, citing Nigeria's tax policy's prohibition on retroactive taxation, with most banks having already settled their tax liabilities for the 2023 financial year. KPMG Nigeria argues that this new tax could violate the principle of legitimate expectations and potentially trigger a constitutional crisis. Well, following another consultative meeting, the federal government and the leadership of the organized labor unions in the country have agreed on 70,000 Naira as a new minimum wage. Speaking after the meeting, which was presided over by President Bola Tinubu, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Idris, said in addition, the federal government will be more investment in renewable energy, and there will be more acquisition of CNG buses going forward. Take a listen.
And the organized labor have agreed on an increase on the 62,000 Naira minimum wage. The new national minimum wage that we expect Mr. President to submit to the National Assembly for legislation is 70,000 Naira. But that is not all. There is also a boost, like Mr. President has assured, and ensuring that massive investment is going to be made in the area of infrastructure. There is also a deepening of the investment of the federal government in renewable energy. More money is going to go into the acquisition of more buses, the CNG buses. Nigeria is going to be more CNG compliant, according to the president. We are moving in this transition to renewable.
We are taking this with mixed feeling because of the situation of the economy, but we have to move ahead. Despite the situation, and the negotiation can linger, coming from 62 to 70, and then with the promise that we'll come back soon to negotiate it. We are taking it back to our constituency.
With also the caveat that this is going to be done every 3 years. 3 years. The next review will be 3 years. And after that pronouncement, we from Labour just has been said that, well, we have received what the president has promised from both ends.
All right, so finally, we have consensus on the minimum wage figure. It's 70,000 naira. We're waiting approval, definitely from Senator. But let's get an outlook for the macros. Joining us for this is Dr. Afolabi Oluwokere. He's the Chief Economist, Analyst, and Data Services and Resources. Joining me via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
Good morning, Ladi.
Good morning.
Good morning to our viewers.
So I guess we should be excited, I think, at this time. But going by the exchange rate, with the minimum wage in dollar terms, I think we're about $44 going by the exchange rate close for the official window. That's about $44 in dollar terms. So we see it's rising in naira terms, but still reducing when converted to dollars. So we moved from about $64 in Obasanjo's government, $120 in President Goodluck Jonathan's government. That's if you go by that exchange rate. Then $60 in President Buhari's tenure, and now we're at about $44. So currency devaluation seems to be hurting the average worker, so much. How are you seeing this?
Yes, so yeah, you're right. I think the first thing is that we are happy. There is an agreement already. I think that's something very important for us to celebrate. It's an important aspect of the production process. So if labor is not happy, if labor is on strike, a lot of things will be on strike in the country. So we are happy that they finally, even though there was a wide margin starting from about 600.
I'm so sorry I have to interrupt you right now. Just hold your thoughts. For now, we're going to be joining a live coverage of the funeral service of Chief Mrs. Florence Morenike Saraki. That's going to be going on our DSTV, but other platforms we're still going to be on right here. That's talking about business morning on Sunrise Day. So.
This is a live Channels television event.